The conference room felt smaller than usual that Tuesday morning in downtown Chicago. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with the tension that always preceded big presentations. I'd been awake since 4 a.m., rehearsing every word, every slide, every possible objection. My hands were steady as I arranged my materials on the mahogany table, but my heart was pounding like a jackhammer. Marcus Caldwell, our CEO, strode in exactly at 9 o'clock. His navy Armani suit pressed to perfection, his silver hair swept back in that way that screamed old money and older attitudes. Behind him filed the executive team, 12 people who would decide the fate of 3 years of my life. "Good morning, everyone," Marcus said, settling into his leather chair at the head of the table. Sarah Martinez has requested this meeting to present what she calls a revolutionary approach to customer intelligence. Sarah, you have 30 minutes. 30 minutes. 3 years of work reduced to 30 minutes. I stood, clicked my remote, and my opening slide filled the wall-mounted screen. The autumn rain pelted the floor-to-ceiling windows 40 stories above Michigan Avenue, but I forced myself to focus on the faces around the table. 11 men and me, the same ratio it had been since I'd started at Mitchell & Associates. "Gentlemen," I began, then caught myself. "Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to show you will change how we think about customer relationships forever." For the next 25 minutes, I laid out my vision. An AI-driven customer segmentation system that didn't just analyze purchase history, but understood emotional triggers, predicted life events, and identified the precise moment when a customer was ready to make a decision. I showed them prototypes, data models, projected revenue increases of 40%. The room was silent when I finished. Dead silent. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. "Sarah, I appreciate your enthusiasm. This is clearly a passion project for you." Passion project. The words hit me like a slap. "Sir, this isn't passion. This is profit. The data shows—" "Sarah," his voice cut through mine like a blade. "You're a bright girl, but this AI-driven customer segmentation system you're proposing, it's beyond your scope. These kinds of strategic decisions require a certain level of perspective." I felt my cheeks burn. Around the table, 12 executives watched like spectators at a car crash. I could see it in their faces. The secondhand embarrassment. The relief that it wasn't them being dressed down. "But sir, I've run the numbers. This system could increase our client retention by 40% and reduce acquisition costs by—" "Sarah," Marcus's voice was softer now, almost paternal, which somehow made it worse. "You're just an employee. Strategic decisions are made by people who understand the bigger picture. People with skin in the game. Just an employee." The words echoed in my head as I gathered my materials with shaking hands. Just an employee. 3 years of 60-hour weeks. Of missing my nephew's birthday parties. Of building their entire digital infrastructure from scratch when they were still using fax machines for client communications. I walked back to my cubicle in a daze, past the break room where my colleagues suddenly found their shoes fascinating, past the motivational posters that now felt like cruel jokes. "Innovation starts with you," one proclaimed. "Dream big, achieve bigger," announced another. My cubicle felt like a cage. Gray fabric walls, a desk barely large enough for my laptop, a single photo of my family from last Christmas. This was my reward for 3 years of dedication. A 6x6 prison where I was supposed to be grateful for the opportunity to make other people rich. I opened my laptop and began typing my resignation letter. That evening, I sat in my Lincoln Park apartment, staring at the rejection email Marcus had personally sent. The city lights twinkled below my windows, but all I could see was his smug face when he'd dismissed 3 years of my innovation in 30 seconds. My phone buzzed, a text from my sister Jessica in Portland. "How did the presentation go? I've been thinking about you all day." I typed and deleted 5 different responses. "It went fine." Delete. Not exactly what I hoped. Delete. "Marcus is an ass." Delete. "I'm going to destroy him." Delete. Finally, I settled on time for a change. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. If I was just an employee to them, then I'd become the asset they'd wish they'd never lost. I'd show Marcus Caldwell what strategic thinking really looked like. 2 weeks later, I was sitting across from venture capitalist Elena Rodriguez in her downtown office, my laptop open between us. The view of Lake Michigan stretched endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, but my focus was laser-sharp on the woman who could make or break my future. Elena's office was everything Marcus's wasn't. Modern, welcoming, with photographs of successful startups she'd funded covering one entire wall. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with short black hair, and the kind of energy that made you want to lean forward and pay attention. "Walk me through this again," Elena said, her dark eyes studying my presentation. "You're telling me you can predict customer behavior with 92% accuracy?" "Not predict," I corrected, clicking to the next slide. "Understand. My system doesn't just analyze purchase history. It analyzes emotional triggers, seasonal patterns, social influences, even social media sentiment. I've been testing it on Mitchell & Associates client data for 2 years. Elena's eyebrows rose. "You've been testing this at your current job?" "Former job," I said, savoring the words. "I resigned yesterday." The truth was more complicated. I'd spent my final weeks at Mitchell & Associates documenting everything, not their proprietary client information, which would have been theft, but the gaps in their system, the inefficiencies I'd identified, the opportunities they'd ignored. When I'd submitted my resignation, Marcus had barely looked up from his golf magazine. "We'll miss your contributions," he'd said, not bothering to hide his relief. Now, sitting across from Elena, I felt the weight of possibility. She was one of the few VCs in Chicago who specialized in AI startups, and her reputation for backing underdogs was legendary. "Tell me about your background," Elena said, leaning back in her chair. 3 years at Mitchell & Associates. But what before that? Northwestern, computer science and business. Before Mitchell, I was at a startup called Dataflow. They were acquired by IBM. I built their entire customer analytics platform from the ground up. Why Mitchell & Associates? I paused, remembering my younger self, so eager to prove I belonged in the corporate world. I thought I wanted stability. I thought I wanted to work for a serious company. I was wrong. Elena smiled. "The best entrepreneurs usually are refugees from corporate America. What do you need?" $300,000 to start, I said. 6 months to build the platform, another 6 to acquire our first 10 clients. Elena leaned forward. "Sarah, you're asking me to bet on you disrupting an industry you just left. What makes you think you can compete with established firms like Mitchell & Associates?" I clicked to my final slide, a mock-up of customer retention rates, with Mitchell & Associates' dismal numbers highlighted in red. "Because I know exactly what they're doing wrong, and I know how to do it right." 3 days later, Elena called. "We're in. But I have one condition. You need a business partner. Someone with industry connections and sales experience." That's how I met David Chen, a former McKinsey consultant who'd been looking for his next venture. Our first meeting was at a coffee shop in River North, where he'd grilled me for 3 hours about market penetration strategies and competitive analysis. "You're either brilliant or completely insane," he'd said, shaking my hand. "Probably both. I'm in." David was everything I wasn't. Smooth, connected, comfortable in boardrooms. He'd grown up in Winnetka, gone to Harvard Business School, and had the kind of Rolodex that opened doors I didn't even know existed. By December, we'd incorporated Insight Analytics. By January, we had our first client. The irony wasn't lost on me that our first client was Brennan Industries, one of Mitchell & Associates' biggest competitors. CEO Patricia Brennan had heard about our platform through Elena's network, and she was exactly the kind of forward-thinking executive I'd always wished I'd worked for. "Your preliminary analysis is impressive," Patricia said during our March meeting in her Oak Brook office. Her conference room was smaller than Marcus's, but the energy was completely different. Collaborative, innovative, focused on results rather than hierarchy. "But I need to see results, not just projections," she continued. "My board is skeptical of AI solutions. They've been burned before." That's when I deployed what I'd been building for months, a comprehensive analysis of her company's customer base that revealed patterns her internal team had missed completely. I'd identified 3 distinct customer segments that were being treated identically, despite having completely different motivations and decision-making processes. "Your high-value customers make decisions in the first quarter of the fiscal year," I explained, pointing to the data visualization on my laptop. "But your sales team is pushing hardest in Q4. You're missing your best prospects by 6 months. Patricia's head of sales, a skeptical-looking man named Robert Kim, leaned forward. How can you possibly know that from external data? Because I'm not just looking at what they buy, I said. I'm looking at when they budget, when they hire, when they restructure, public filings, job postings, even LinkedIn updates. It's all connected. Within 6 weeks, Brennan Industries had increased their customer retention by 28%. Word spread quickly in Chicago's tight-knit business community. By summer, we had 12 clients. By fall, we had 30. Each success felt like a small victory against the dismissive voice in my head that still echoed Marcus's words. But I wanted more than success. I wanted vindication. David noticed my obsession during one of our weekly strategy meetings. Sarah, you've built something incredible here. We're on track to hit $5 million in revenue this year. Why do you keep checking Mitchell & Associates' quarterly reports? I'd been tracking their performance since I'd left, watching their client retention rates decline, their acquisition costs rise. They were struggling with exactly the problems my system could solve. Because I want to make them an offer they can't refuse, I said. David laughed. You want to sell our services to your old company? That's either genius or masochistic. Maybe both, I admitted, echoing his words from our first meeting. The opportunity came in November. Marcus had been forced to lay off 15% of his workforce after losing 3 major clients, including 2 that had defected to Brennan Industries. I'd heard through industry connections that Mitchell & Associates was desperate for a competitive edge. I drafted the proposal on a rainy Thursday evening, the same kind of weather that had been falling the day Marcus had dismissed my ideas. But this time, I wasn't an employee begging for approval. I was a CEO offering a solution. The subject line of my email was simple: Partnership Opportunity, Insight Analytics. I hit send at 9:47 p.m. and went to bed with a smile on my face. Marcus called me personally the next morning. His voice was different, strained, lacking the confidence that had always intimidated me. Sarah, I was surprised to receive your proposal. I have to admit, I didn't expect to hear from you again. Business is business, Marcus, I said, enjoying the shift in power dynamics. I think we can help each other. The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday, in the same conference room where he'd dismissed my ideas 18 months earlier. But this time, I walked in as CEO of a company valued at $12 million, flanked by David and our head of client relations, Trevor Martinez. The room looked smaller than I remembered. The mahogany table was the same, the view of Michigan Avenue unchanged, but everything felt different. I was different. Marcus looked older, more tired. The confidence that had once filled the room had been replaced by something that looked suspiciously like desperation. The executive team was smaller too. Several faces I recognized were missing, casualties of the recent layoffs. Your proposal is interesting, Marcus began, the same condescending tone creeping back into his voice. But I'm not sure Mitchell & Associates needs. You've lost 4 major clients in 6 months, I interrupted, sliding a folder across the table. Your customer acquisition costs have increased by 60%, and your retention rates are at a 5-year low. You need us more than we need you. The room fell silent. I recognized some faces around the table, colleagues who'd watched my humiliation 18 months ago, who'd said nothing when Marcus had dismissed my work. Now they were watching again, but the power dynamic had completely reversed. What exactly are you proposing? Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I opened my laptop and projected our terms onto the conference room screen. A 12-month contract. We'll implement our customer intelligence platform across your entire client base. Our conservative projections show a 40% improvement in retention and a 30% reduction in acquisition costs. And your fee? $2.5 million plus 20% of the increased revenue we generate. Marcus's face went pale. Sarah, that's almost half our annual marketing budget. Yes, I said, letting the word hang in the air. It's also less than what you'll lose if you don't adapt. Your biggest competitor, Brennan Industries, has been using our platform for 8 months. Their market share has grown by 15% in that time. I could see the realization dawning on his face. Patricia Brennan hadn't just hired us. She'd been using our insights to systematically outmaneuver Mitchell and Associates in client pitches. "You need to understand something, Marcus," I continued, my voice steady and professional. 18 months ago, you told me I was just an employee. You said strategic decisions were made by people who understood the bigger picture. Well, I understand the bigger picture now. And from where I'm sitting, you're not in it. The negotiation took 3 hours. Marcus tried every tactic. Appeals to loyalty, threats about industry reputation, even a pathetic attempt to claim credit for inspiring my entrepreneurial spirit. But the numbers didn't lie. Mitchell and Associates was hemorrhaging clients, and we were their best hope for survival. In the end, Marcus agreed to a modified version of our proposal, $2 million up front, plus performance bonuses tied to measurable improvements in client retention and acquisition. As I walked out of the Mitchell and Associates building for the last time, I felt a sense of completion I hadn't expected. The satisfaction wasn't just about the money or the vindication. It was about proving to myself that I was never just an employee. I was an innovator, a strategist, a leader. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. A text from Jessica. How did it go? This time I didn't hesitate. He said I was just an employee. Today I became the asset they couldn't afford to lose. 6 months later, Insight Analytics was acquired by a Fortune 500 company for $43 million. Marcus sent me a congratulatory email, which I read once and deleted. Some lessons are worth every dollar it costs to learn them.